Welcome back to our channel, and our topic for today is all about poetry. What is a poem? Webster says a poem is a metrical composition, a composition in verse written in certain measures, whether in blank verse or in rhyme, and characterized by imagination and poetic diction. Some poems are very formal and others are more playful. Some are published in beautiful books and others are written in sidewalks. The thing that makes all poems alike is that it expresses writer's imagination and feelings in a very creative way. So, what is a poem? Think of a poem you read in the past. Can you remember one you enjoyed? Now, think about the lyrics of your favorite song. Now, consider the following question: what is the most memorable line of the poem or song? Are the lines grouped in any particular way? Do any of the lines rhyme? Now, here are types of poetry: the lyric, narrative, dramatic, and special types. In lyric poetry, it consists of sonnet, elegy, and ode. In narrative, it consists of epic, ballad, and social. In dramatic monologue, soliloquy, character sketch, and oration. Special types of poetry are haiku, cinquain, limerick, named poem. Now let's go to the three elements of the poetry: the sound, structure, and meaning. Alright, and poetry also uses figurative language, the writing or speech not meant to be taken literally. Poets use figures of speech to state ideas in new ways. Poets write poems that are usually divided into lines and then grouped into stanzas or verses. Look at the following figurative languages types. The simile. It is a comparison between two usually unrelated things using the word like or as. Example: Joe is as hungry as a bear. In the morning, Ray is like an angry lion. Metaphor. An implied comparison between the two usually unrelated things. Examples: Lenny is a snake. Jeannie is a mouse when it comes to standing up for herself. The difference between simile and metaphor is that simile requires either like or as, or to be included in the comparison, and a metaphor requires that neither be used. When it comes to using a metaphor device in a poetry, the poet can either make the entire poem a metaphor for something or put a little metaphors throughout the poem. Hyperbole, an exaggeration for the sake of emphasis. Example: I may sweat to death. The blood bank needs a river blood. Personification, giving a human characteristics to inanimate objects, ideas, or animals. For example, the sun stretches its lazy fingers over the valley. Symbol, a word or image that signifies something other than what it is literally represented. Example: dark or black images in poems are often used to symbolize death. Light or white images are often used to symbolize life. Imagery, using words to create a picture in the reader's mind. Free verse, poetry that follows no rules, just about anything goes. It does not mean that it uses no devices, it just means that the poetry does not follow traditional conventions such as punctuation, capitalization, rhyme, scheme, rhythm, and meter. Example of free verse poem: the fog comes in a little cat feet. It sits looking over a harbor and city on silent haunches, and then moves on. No rhyme, no rhythm, no meter. That is free verse poem. Allusion, a reference to another piece of literature, to history, Example, she had Diane's wit. This is from Romeo and Juliet. This is an allusion to Roman mythology and the goddess Diana. The three most common types of allusion refer to mythology, the Bible, and Shakespeare's writings. Other forms of poetry are narrative poems, tells a story in verse. Narrative poems often have elements similar to those short stories such as plot and character. Haiku, a three-line Japanese poem verse form. The first, the third lines each have 5 syllables, and the second line has 7 syllables. So 575. Forms, feelings of a single speaker, often in highly musical verse. This may be why words to songs are called lyrics. Ballads, song-like poems that tell a story, often dealing with adventure and romance. Again, in music, most love songs are called ballads. Other forms of poetry: concrete, poems shaped to look like their subject. The poet arranges the line to create picture on the page. Epic poetry, characteristic usually found in pre-literate societies. This style of poetry was typically passed down through oral traditions. Elizabethan poetry. Most of our ideas about how poetry should be written come from this era. Elizabethan poetry was written through the 17th and 19th century. This poetry has a heavy emphasis on many rules regarding rhythm, rhyme, and meter. For examples of this poetry, please see William Shakespeare, William Wordsworth. Now let's go to the modern poetry. In modernism, we see poets breaking the rules of gentlemanly Elizabethan poetry and forming new definition of what makes a poem interesting. No longer did poetry have to follow the rules about rhythm, rhyme, and meter. Poetry from this era ranges from small poems about an image, C. E. Cummings, to long and sprawling epics written in several languages. See also T.S. Eliot for more examples of the 21st century poetry. See below Elizabeth Bishop, Langston Hughes. What do you mean by poetry? Ancient Greek is an art form in which human language is used for its aesthetic qualities in addition to or instead of or its notional and semantic content. It consists largely of oral or literary works in which language is used in a manner that is felt by the user and audience to differ from the ordinary prose. Poetry is important. It reaches inside people and heals their wounds like nothing else can. It is an escape from reality and a method of coping with reality. It's certain feeling inside, according to geocities.com. Poetry is a form of expression written seeking approval from no one but read and interpreted by anyone and everyone. It reveals your most inner thoughts that may never be spoken, forming a deep communication to others and for you, a cherished token that you will always remember. Here are the elements of poetry prepared by Miss Jenny Lou C. Sasoy of UE, Caloocan. Alright, so poetry is the art of expressing oneself in verse. It uses few words to convey its message. It is meant to be read aloud. It uses imagery or figures to speech to express feelings or create mental picture idea. The elements is line, a single line in a poem, often organized into a stanza. Example here is Chartless by Emily Dickinson. So here are 8 lines she uses. I never saw a moon or moon. I never saw the sea. Yet I know how the heather looks and what wave must be. I never spoke with God nor visited in heaven. yet I am certain of the spot as if the chart were given. This poem has 8 lines organized into 2 stanza. Another element of poem is the stanza. It is the group of lines, couplet 2 lines, triplet 3 lines, quatrain 4 lines, and quinrain 5 lines, sestet 6 lines, octet 8 lines, and it develops and emphasizes one idea: rhyme and rhyme scheme. Example, First and Last by David McCord. A tadpole hasn't a pole at all, and he doesn't live in a hole in the wall. Do you notice, guys, the rhymes at the end of every sentences? There's always a rhyme. The sounds, always similar sounds. It is rhyming. Alright, so recite for yourselves again this poem, the first and the last. A tadpole hasn't a pole at all, and he doesn't live in the hole in the wall. You got it wrong, and the polycat's not a cat and a pole. I tell you what. A bullfrog never a ball, and how could a cowbird possibly be a cow? A kingbird, though is a kind of king, and he chases a crow like anything. That's rhyme. Rhyme scheme. Words rhyme if they sound alike. Poems often use rhymes at the end of the lines. Rhyme scheme is the pattern of rhymes in a poem. Poets used rhymes to add musical sounds to their poems. Types of rhymes: alliteration, repetition of initial consonant sound. She sells seashells by the seashore. Consonants, repetition of the intermediate or final consonant sound. Tick-tock, flip-flop, singing, longing. Assonance, repetition of vowel sound. Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Alright, so that is cons make that assonance, repetition of vowel sounds. Rhythm. Another element of poem is rhythm, pattern of beats or series of stressed and unstressed syllables in poem. Poets create rhythm by using words in which parts are emphasized or not emphasized. Meter. Meter is the measure of line in poetry. Foot. It is the grouping of 2 or more syllables making up a basic unit of a meter. Types of metrical foot. Iambic foot consists of an accented syllable followed by an accented. It can be heard in such words such as because, hello, Elaine. Trochaic or trochaic foot consists of an accented syllable followed by an accented. These are trochaic words. Answer Tuesday, Albert. Dactylic. Dactylic foot consists of an accented syllable followed by 2 unaccented syllables. You can hear the dactylic beat in these words: beautiful, silently, Saturday. Anapistic foot consists of 2 unaccented syllables followed by an accented syllable. These words are anapistic: cavalier, tambourine, Marian. Spondaic foot consists of 2 accented syllables. The pyrrhic foot consists of 2 unaccented syllables. Sounds so confused? Well, let's go on. Mood, the feeling that the poem creates in a reader. It can be a positive mood or negative. Mood can be made with the length of the sentences with chosen words and word sounds. Poor by Myra Livingston. I heard of poor, it means hungry, no food, no shoes, no place to live, nothing good. It means winter night and being cold. It is lonely alone, feeling old. Poor is tired face. Poor is thin, poor is standing outside looking in. That sounds pretty good. Here are the other elements. The tone is one element of the poem. You must put a tone in the way you deliver your poem. It is the attitude of a writer takes towards the subject or audience of the poem. Example, the crocodile. How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the water of the Nile on every golden scale? So, how cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly he spreads his claws, and welcomes little fish in with gently smiling jaws. Imagery. Our language that appeals to the five senses. Our words picture helps the reader to experience familiar things in fresh way using the senses. So the five senses are your smell, your sight, your hearing, your touch, your taste. And here is how to make a visual poem. Check out this poem titled The Black Automaton by the Los Angeles artist, contemporary artist, poet Douglas in Los Angeles. Here he enlarges, tilts, and overlaps each letter for the purpose. And what is the purpose of tilting and overlapping the letters? Notice the way some lines stands out because of their font style, size, and placement. These are quotes. Kearney appropriates popular song by Eminem, Rakim, and Digital Underground. Why do you think the poet would display the lyrics this way? Your visual poem, this time it is a cut up words from any tabloids or magazines. Take something you wrote recently. It could be a note or a text message. Break up the text somehow. You could rewrite it, print it out, and cut it up. Using, of course, scissors. And then try to rearrange it. Put the words back together to create a poem. Isn't that amazing? How can you alter the words to emphasize the important parts of the poem? Artists who first created poetry this way broke a lot of rules. Example, a portrait of Marcel Duchamp in the 1920s, a movement called Dadaism or Dadaist, rejected the traditional form of poetry. While others wrote in traditional poetic forms, the Dadaist would cut up words and use chants to reassemble it again or put them together. Here's another example of visual poetry by Italian writer. An artist, Ardingo Suffici, who was considered a part of the Dadaist or Futurist movement. Futurists like the Dadaist reacted against traditional poetry. What is the reason? They believe the shapes of letters and words were important parts of a poem's meaning. A visual poem number 2. How to make your visual poem. This is a part of a series of contemporary artist Carrie May. It's titled From Here I Saw What Happened and I Cried. Weems appropriated photographs depicting slavery. from the mid 1800s as well as contemporary time. The artist enlarged and reprinted the photographs and then reframed them using glass, each with her own words, and juxtaposes the text and image to create something new. Whims the artist because of the changes. How do you experience the portrait? Different. Try to compare the two pictures. Here is how your visual poem appropriation. Take a photograph that is important to you and transform it. You can use your computer. Next, juxtapose the image with your own words, like this one. Say something important about your photograph. What do we know about it? Here is visual poem number 3. When you mean visual form, the visual layouts are more important than the words. Here is Kansuke Yamamoto poem, a Japanese poet. Yamamoto was a poet and an artist, and he referred to his dreamlike photographs as visual poetry. Yamamoto didn't have a luxury of computer, that's why he altered only images using papers or collage artwork, or manipulated the negatives of the film in photography dark rooms. He also used collage techniques and other form of old-fashioned techniques. The title of this photograph comes from a poem called I Wish I Were Thinking in the Body of a Horse by a writer named Hideo Oguma. So not only did Yamamoto consider his work a visual poetry, but he also referred or referenced poets and poetry. Why do you think Yamamoto referred to this or to his photographs as visual poetry? Okay, now let's go to your visual poem, collage. Okay, so let's try to create a visual poem like this. When you say visual poem, meaning there are only few words used. Most of the representation is done by visual or by artwork. Cut out images you like or use digital pictures that you've been taken. And then next step is combine pictures in the way that you would never see in your real life. Give the work a title with words selected from favorite quotes. How does a borrowed title change the meaning of the work of art? So what counts as a visual poem? Take a look again at the Yamamoto's visual poem next to an image. There is no text written here, but only visual pictures. So a poem can be a visual poem. Where else do you see visual poetry? On the streets? Everywhere? Where do you see visual poetry in your life? Okay, don't go away, guys. Next up will be guidelines on how to make your next project with regards to poetry. Yes, here is your last project for our subject, arts appreciation. This one is poems composition. You will going to compose your own poems and then try to put a background. Write your poem on your artistic background. You can have a collage background, or you can use watercolor, poster color, or any medium that you can draw your artistic background. What do you mean by background? So artistically made background is handmade. Okay, do not use computer generated images that you will just paste and then you type your text or your poems. Just create a handmade drawings or artistic works or background. Your background can be a natural view. It can be ocean, a forest, rivers, or it can be plants, flowers, or it can be under the sea, under the water. It depends on how your creative thinking creates pictures that you will put your poems. So here are some example, guys. Okay, this is a computer generated picture. Do not use like this one, but instead make a creative background. You can cut magazines, pictures from the magazine. You can cut dried leaves. You can cut a piece of cloth and then try to make collage, or you can use watercolor, poster color to create an artistically done background. Okay, and then write your own composition of your poem. It's a free verse poem, meaning there is no limit, there is no rules of the free verse poem. Okay, another example here are lovers. Okay, another example for kids. If you're a mom or a parent now, you can compose a poem for your kid and then try to draw a kiddie background like this one. Okay, guys? And don't you worry about your attendance. The most important is your projects and homeworks. That is your output. Okay, and well, I wish you advance Merry Christmas and maybe a Happy New Year too. And thank you for viewing, guys, and don't forget to make a lot of comments on our YouTube channel for your attendance. Thank you so much. Ciao for now.